Let me ask you something. Have you ever walked into a house and thought, this is perfect?
It's perfect. It's perfect.
And then found out a few weeks or a few months after closing that your great new, seemingly renovated dream home is in reality a money pit? In many areas, inventory is still tight, competition is still very real, and flipped homes are still showing up every week. They photograph beautifully, they show incredibly well, and if you're not careful, they will absolutely fool you. Before you fall in love with that brand new kitchen and those quartz countertops, take a step back and ask yourself one simple question. What didn't they fix that you can't see? Are you buying a fully, properly renovated home, or just something that looks great in pictures? From updated kitchens and bathrooms to stylish flooring and fixtures, flipped homes offer that low-maintenance, modern lifestyle a lot of buyers are looking for. But here's the reality. Most of the flips I see look great in photos and at first glance, but once you slow down and really start looking, that's where things begin to fall apart. While they may look shiny new on the surface, a lot of them are hiding problems underneath. And if you are not paying attention, you can end up inheriting someone else's rushed renovations that have now become your problem. It's important to understand who you are dealing with when you buy one of these flipped homes. On one side, you've got experienced investors who do this at a high level, with systems, crews, and a reputation to protect. On the other side, you've got smaller investors and LLCs trying to chase the kind of market we had 2 or 3 years ago, back when homes were flying off the shelf and margins were easier to cover. The problem is we're not in that market anymore. And when people are trying to force deals to work in a tougher environment, corners tend to get cut. Now, are there good flippers out there? Of course there are. I have walked through some incredible renovations with high quality work done the right way. Homes I would personally feel comfortable buying. But knowing what to look for, I can usually tell the difference between a good flip and a bad one within 5 minutes of walking in the door. And a lot of what I have seen in person recently isn't the good kind. Before we go any further, if you find this video useful, do me a quick favor, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. I try to put out helpful content like this every week to help buyers, sellers, and homeowners avoid costly mistakes and make smarter decisions. Problem number 1, poor workmanship. This is the biggest one I see. Everything looks great at first. New cabinets, fresh floors, updated fixtures. But when you slow down and really start paying attention, the quality starts to show. One of the first things I always look at is tile work, because bad tile work is one of the easiest ways to spot poor workmanship. Uneven lines, sloppy cuts, inconsistent spacing, a grout that looks rushed. It stands out immediately if you know what you're looking for. I also pay very close attention to the paint. Sloppy paint jobs are everywhere in flips. Paint on trim, paint on outlets, uneven edges where they rushed through it, roller marks, missed spots, or areas that were clearly painted just to cover something up. It might seem minor, but it tells you everything about how the rest of the job was handled. And if they're cutting corners on things you can clearly see, like tile and paint, what do you think they did behind the walls? Take a closer look at cabinets. Are they lined up properly? Any gaps? Check the trim. Does it sit flush? Do the doors close correctly? These are small details that tell a much bigger story, and more often than not, they point to work that was done quickly instead of done right. And if you want to know the biggest red flags you should never ignore when house hunting, make sure to check out this video right here. Problem number 2, the stuff they didn't touch. Here's a pattern I see all the time. Beautiful kitchen, fully updated bathrooms, new flooring, fresh paint everywhere, but the windows are original. The electrical panel hasn't been touched, the HVAC is on its last leg, and the plumbing is outdated. They focus on what sells the home, not what costs you money later on. And this is where buyers get into serious trouble, because the things they skip are not small ticket items. We're talking about the roof, the furnace, the air conditioning, the water heater, the electrical system, and even the foundation. These are expensive problems, sometimes even very expensive problems depending on the issue. A new roof could cost you $10,000 to $20,000. A furnace and AC could run you another $10,000. Electrical updates, especially if it's an older panel or outdated wiring, can get expensive really fast. Foundation issues, that's a whole different level. So while you're standing in a beautiful kitchen thinking everything is done, you could be walking into a situation where you're spending tens of thousands of dollars within the first couple of years. That's why I always say you're not just buying what you see. You're buying everything that wasn't done. And in a lot of these flips, what wasn't done is where the real cost lives. Problem number 3, hidden issues. This is the one that should make you slow down. Paint and new flooring are the two best tools a flipper has to hide problems, and they are incredibly effective. Water damage, mold, pet odors, uneven floors, cracks in the foundation, all of that can be covered up with a fresh coat of paint and new flooring. I have seen water stains painted over, floors installed on top of uneven subflooring, and soft spots hidden under brand new materials. I've also seen signs of past leaks or moisture issues completely masked just to make the home show better. And sometimes it's not even intentional cover-ups. Sometimes it's just rushed work where they didn't take the time to properly fix the root issue. The scary part is you might not catch this during a quick showing. In some cases, even a standard inspection might not catch everything depending on how well it's hidden. These are the problems that show up months later. A leak that reappears, a floor that starts to shift, a smell that comes back. And when it does, it's your problem, not the investor's. That's how a house that looked like a great deal on paper turns into something that drains your time, your money, and your patience. Problem number 4, no history, no safety net. This is something a lot of buyers don't think about. When you buy from a homeowner, you usually get disclosures based on their experience living in the home. When you buy from a builder, you often get warranties. With a flip, the investor may have owned the home for a very short period of time. They don't know the history. They don't know if there were reoccurring water issues, drainage problems, or past repairs that keep popping up. And even if they did know, you're not always getting the full story. Once you close, it's all yours. No history, no safety net, no one to fall back on. You're stepping into a home with a brand new look, but an unknown past. Problem number 5, unpermitted work. This one can get expensive fast. A lot of flippers will go in, open up walls, move plumbing, update electrical, and never pull permits, which means that work was never inspected. If it wasn't inspected, you have no idea if it was done correctly. And now that risk becomes yours. The good news is you can actually check this. You or your agent can contact the local city or building department and request the permit history for the property. You want to see what permits were pulled, what work was done, and whether those permits were closed out properly. An open permit means the city never signed off on the work. No permits at all for major renovations is a major red flag. And while you're doing that, take a look at the purchase history. When did the investor buy the property? And how quickly did it come back on the market? If a home was purchased and then relisted 60, 90, maybe 120 days later, that's a very fast turnaround. And in a lot of cases, that speed can be a sign the work was done quickly, not thoroughly. Now, that doesn't automatically mean it's a bad renovation, but it should absolutely make you slow down and take a closer look at everything. Because if the timeline feels rushed, there's a good chance the work might be too. Problem number 6, cheap or unlicensed labor. This is extremely common, especially when investors are trying to protect their margins. A lot of times they go with the cheapest labor available, and that often means unlicensed contractors or crews that are rushing from one job to the next. Now again, there are a lot of skilled people out there without licenses, but when you combine cheap labor, tight timelines, no permits, and no inspections, you're stacking risk on top of risk. Work gets done faster, but not always correctly. Corners get cut, details get ignored, and there's usually no long-term accountability for the work that was done. So if something fails 6 months or a year after you move in, you're not calling the flipper, you're paying out of pocket. What buyers should focus on. When you're looking at a flipped home, you have to prioritize quality over quantity. Flashy finishes are designed to grab your attention, and they do a great job of it. But your job is to look past that and focus on how the home was actually put together. Pay attention to the details, ask questions, take your time, and most importantly, get a thorough inspection. If something feels off, dig deeper. Bring in specialists if needed. A few $100s up front can save you tens of thousands of dollars later on. What I would do as a buyer. If I were buying a flipped home, here is exactly what I would do. I would slow down and not get distracted by the cosmetics. I would check the details very closely and pay attention to anything that feels off. I would look at the purchase history of the home and see when it was last sold compared to when it was listed again. If it's a quick turnaround, that's a signal to dig deeper and not just take things at face value. I would pull the permit history before getting emotionally invested. Ask for receipts and documentation, and make sure the work was done by qualified professionals. I would never skip the inspection, and if something came up, I'd bring in specialists. I would also focus heavily on big ticket items like the roof, HVAC, electrical, plumbing, and the foundation. And finally, I would use everything I find as leverage in negotiations, because problems don't always mean walk away, but they absolutely need to be accounted for. The bottom line, not every flipped home is bad. Some are done right and can be great opportunities. But a lot of them, especially right now, are built to sell, not built to last. Flippers often prioritize cosmetic upgrades over structural integrity, and rushed renovations with lower quality materials can lead to problems that don't show up until months or even years later. What looks like a great deal today can turn into a very expensive mistake tomorrow. For the most part, flips are something I would approach with a lot of caution. If you've looked at a flipped home or bought one and ran into issues, drop a comment below. I would love to hear your experience. And if you're thinking about buying here in the Cleveland area and want help navigating this process, reach out. I can help you spot the difference between a good flip and a bad one before it costs you serious money. Thanks for watching. I'm George Poporad, and I'll see you in the next video.